Let me ask you, what is your standard that you use to determine blight?
The standard?
Yeah, because they give you facts, but what are the standards that you use? Do you have like a sheet or some other kind of measures that you use that when you get the facts, you look at them in terms of those measures and you say, okay, bingo, it has measured up to a definition of blight, or bingo, it has not measured up to a definition of blight?
No, we use the standard that's set forth in the UDC Act, which is that an area is determined to be substandard and unsanitary, and we have always maintained in litigation that it is not a static kind of measurement that can be reduced to specific criteria on a sheet of paper, because it has to do with a number of different factors in various environments.
What I'm trying to get at is ways that you can assure the public, which is in great doubt right now, that your decisions are on the merits, because there's questions about it.
Are you asking for the checklist?
For your checklist. So who was a part of the team that looks at the study, the facts of the study, and says, okay, I looked at the study, and they all sort of agree? I mean, is it one individual that helps, that reviews the study and makes the determination? Is it a team?
Well, I'll tell you that when the study is completed, the blight study itself goes into the package of materials that go to our board of directors, and that is part of the analysis that the directors use to make their determination of whether or not a project is blighted. Let me just explain, though, to you that historically, UDC was created in 1968, and this language in our statute has always been there. For the early years of UDC, when we did housing projects, we did take property by condemnation with the same language, and we did not use any kind of blight study. The blight studies have evolved over time based on our view that it was appropriate and proper to document empirically a condition of a neighborhood, that was much better than simply making a conclusory statement in board materials that we have found an area to be blighted. And so we view these studies as a way of having documentation regarding a neighborhood in an area, such that we give our board better information on which to make the determination.
So the study is given to the board?
Yes.
And so the whole board looks at the study?
The board has the entire study.
And they use, these are planners. What do they bring to understand that these conditions are not worthy of being designated as blight? What are the standards? What are the skills that they bring to those areas?
Well, they just bring their general expertise. They read these studies, and if you read them, you will see that they chronicle conditions of neighborhoods. We even go into things like the aging of decay of buildings and whether or not it's loosened or if it's something that's been occurring over a long period of time. And, they set the stage. And it's done in a way to allow lay people to make judgments.
Okay, so for instance, would lay people be like people like in a neighborhood where the so-called study is being done? Would they be considered qualified as lay people to determine whether or not?
If they were on our board of directors.
If they were on your board.
Yeah.
So does your study include the opinions of the people in it?
No,
it does not include
empirical information.
Does it include the opinions of the property owners?
No, it doesn't include opinions of any kind.
Does it include interviews or anything with regard to the property?
The blight study does not.
It does not.
No.
The blight study does not, but the hearing process that we undertake on a plan does accumulate all of the input that we've got from community hearings to meetings we have with electeds and others, and that is something that goes to our board members.
Do the board members get to view the scene of the crime, so to speak, where the blight study was done?
They generally don't. They could if they wish to, but they generally do not.
So the only thing they really have is the study.
Yes, and that usually includes photographs. It usually provides many photographs of project areas.
Provided by the consultant, AKRF.
Some by the consultants and some by, the project applicant.
Yep.
In this case, the university, but yeah.
Has the board ever disagreed?
I can't tell you that. I know that every person on the board has voted affirmatively with respect to every project. I don't know. I'm not aware personally.
But every time there was a blight study recommending blight, the board has agreed?
That's
More or less rubber
Oh,
stamped
yes.
it?
Yeah.
It's rubber stamped it.
I wouldn't say that the fact that they agree is never. I would say that we do good blight studies and that it compels the decision.
What is the court standard of review for the blight?
Is that our determination, well, the court standard of review of our determinations is whether or not our determination has been arbitrary and incomplete.
The one court said it, kind of said it was.
No, they did.
And isn't it, what is the standard that the court uses to determine whether something is arbitrary or capricious?
If a reasonable person could come to this conclusion, and not whether or not the majority of people
A
will.
reasonable person on your board, or a
Right.
reasonable because all right, just wanted, because you all usually only, you don't go to the community to get an opinion from the community, other than the hearing, but by that time you've already. Go ahead, I'm just, a reasonable person.
Right, it's a reasonable person standard. It's just a reasonable person, and in the law, that's just something that's stated. It's not this reasonable person, or it's any reasonable person.
I have a few more questions, if you don't mind. Let me ask you, what are the procedures used by ASDC when hiring consultants?
We use a variety of procedures. Primarily, we do requests for proposals and, issue RFPs, and then we select people based on that. We also are able to hire people on the basis of the sole source if we can articulate a rationale for why it would be cost-effective or otherwise appropriate to hire someone.
And AKRF is sole source?
Yes.
And how often has AKRF been used by the ESDC?
On many occasions, I really don't know the number.
Did you say 10 occasions?
At
20
least 10.
occasions? At least 10?
Yes.
At least 20?
I don't know if it's 20.
Does anybody other than AKRF do this for you?
Yes. We've had other
Who are
people.
the others?
We've had firms such as Parsons, Fisher, Hawk, and in this particular case, we had Earthtech do the other study. There are a few other firms, I can't think of their names right now, but there are a few others.
These others do blight determinations, or is it just AKRF that does your blight determination?
Well, I honestly can't, I don't know the answer to the question of whether or not we've had blight studies done by any firms other than Earthtech and AKRF.
Who does more, Earthtech or AKRF?
Oh, AKRF is done.
By far more than